The Grand Hall of the Valthrine Empire stretched wider than most starships. Its walls were made of crystal that caught the light of 3 suns, creating rainbows that danced across the marble floors. Today, those beautiful lights seemed cruel to Emperor Kael'thor as he sat on his throne, watching yet another suitor flee from his daughter's chambers. This one had lasted only 2 hours. The previous one made it to 3 days. Before that, a proud warrior from the Draxus clan had run screaming after just 40 minutes. Emperor Kael'thor rubbed his temples, feeling every one of his 800 years pressing down on him. Princess Lyessa was 23 years old by human counting, which meant she was at the perfect age for marriage in Valthrine society. She was beautiful, with silver hair that floated like silk and eyes that held galaxies within them. She was intelligent, kind, and gentle. Any father would be proud of such a daughter. But Lyessa was also dangerous. The emperor stood and walked to the great window that overlooked the capital city. Millions of beings from hundreds of worlds lived there in peace under his rule. The Valthrine Empire had brought order to 300 star systems. Wars had ended. Trade flourished. Art and science reached new heights every decade. All of this could crumble if he could not find a husband for his daughter. The problem was simple and terrible. When Lyessa was born, doctors discovered she carried a genetic mutation that appeared once every 1,000 generations. This mutation gave her psychic powers beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. She could move objects with her mind. She could hear thoughts from across a solar system. She could, if she lost control, destroy entire fleets of warships without touching them. And she could not control it. The Emperor had tried everything. The best doctors, the greatest teachers, the most advanced technology in the known universe. Nothing worked. Lyessa's powers responded to her emotions, and emotions could not be locked away or turned off. When she felt fear, things exploded. When she felt sadness, the air grew cold enough to freeze blood. When she felt anger, which was rare because she was so gentle, reality itself seemed to crack around her. The suitors came because marrying her meant incredible political power. The Valthrine Empire had no male heirs. Whoever married Lyessa would one day help rule 300 star systems. But they all left because staying meant living next to a weapon that could accidentally kill them at any moment. Emperor Kael'thor could not blame them. He himself had to be careful around his own daughter. Their palace had more safety shields than a military fortress. Lyessa lived in rooms designed to contain nuclear explosions. She ate alone, slept alone, and spent most of her days in isolation because her presence was simply too dangerous. He had watched his daughter become sadder and quieter with each passing year. She smiled less. She spoke less. She had stopped asking when she could leave her protected chambers. Last week, he had found her crying in the garden, and when he asked what was wrong, she had whispered, "I am a monster, father. Monsters should not marry. Monsters should not have families." The words had broken his heart. That was why he called for the Galactic Assembly. Representatives from every major civilization were invited. The Emperor planned to offer not just his daughter's hand in marriage, but trade agreements, technology sharing, and political alliances beyond imagination. Surely someone would be brave enough. Surely someone would see past the danger to the lonely young woman beneath. The assembly gathered 3 days later. The hall filled with beings of every shape and size. There were the reptilian Draxes with their scales and honor codes, the crystalline Luminae who communicated through light and sound, the insectoid Vrel whose hive minds made them fearless, the floating Aryans who existed partly in other dimensions, and sitting quietly in the back corner, the human delegation. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, and even then, they had managed it by stealing and jury-rigging technology from a crashed alien probe. Most of the older races considered them primitive. Their technology was centuries behind. Their worlds were still recovering from wars they had fought against themselves. They had no great fleets, no ancient wisdom, no unique abilities. But they had stubbornness. Every ambassador knew that humans simply did not quit, even when they should. Emperor Kael'thor stood before the assembly and spoke. He explained his daughter's condition honestly. He did not hide the danger. He told them about the suitors who had fled. He explained that Liesa herself was miserable, trapped in isolation, believing she would never have a normal life. "My daughter is not just a princess," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "She is a person. She deserves love. She deserves companionship. She deserves a life beyond these crystal walls." The assembly listened in respectful silence. "I am offering more than a marriage," the emperor continued. "I am offering partnership with the Valthrine Empire. Trade routes, technology, protection, wealth beyond measure. But more than that, I am asking for compassion. I am asking for courage." He paused, looking across the gathered representatives. "Is there no one courageous enough to marry my daughter?" The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Representatives looked at each other. Some studied their data tablets. Others found the ceiling suddenly very interesting. The Drax's delegate shifted in his seat. The Lumini dimmed their lights. Nobody spoke. Emperor Kael'thor felt his hope dying. He had expected this, but experiencing it hurt nonetheless. He opened his mouth to dismiss the assembly when a sound interrupted him. Someone was standing up in the back of the hall. All eyes turned to see a human rising from his seat. He was young, perhaps in his 30s by human standards. He wore simple clothes, not the formal robes of an ambassador. He looked nervous, his hands trembling slightly, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "I volunteer." The words were spoken in clear Galactic common, with a slight accent that marked him as human. Two simple words that created absolute chaos. The human ambassador, a woman named Mi Young, grabbed the young man's arm and hissed something at him. Other humans in the delegation looked shocked. Around the hall, representatives began talking all at once. Some laughed, some looked confused. The Drax's delegate roared with what might have been amusement or insult, but Emperor Kael'thor simply stared at the young human who had just volunteered to marry his daughter. The human met his gaze without looking away, though his nervousness was obvious. "What is your name?" the emperor asked. "Do-Yun, your majesty," the human replied. "I am an engineer with the human delegation." "Do you understand what you are volunteering for?" "Yes, your majesty. I have read all the public files about Princess Liesa's condition. I believe I can help her." The hall erupted into arguments and protests, but Emperor Kael'thor raised his hand for silence. Something in the young human's eyes caught his attention. It was not greed or ambition. It was not ignorance or stupidity. It looked like simple, genuine compassion. "Very well," the emperor said. "Do-Universe, I will give you 1 lunar cycle to meet my daughter. If you both agree to proceed after that time, the marriage will happen. If not, you may leave with my gratitude and compensation for your time." Do-Yun bowed. "Thank you, your majesty." As the assembly dissolved into chaos, Emperor Kael'thor wondered if he had just witnessed the bravest act he had ever seen, or simply the most foolish. Time would tell which it was. Perhaps with humans, he thought, those two things were often the same. The human delegation's private chambers exploded with noise the moment the assembly ended. Ambassador Mi Young stood in the center of the room, her face red with anger and embarrassment, while Do-Yun sat calmly in a chair nearby. "Have you lost your mind?" Mi Young demanded. "Do you understand what you just did? You volunteered to marry an alien princess who can destroy warships with her thoughts. You did this without permission, without authority, without even consulting me first." Do-Hyun adjusted his glasses and spoke quietly. "I used Provision 17 of the Human Diplomatic Charter, Any citizen may undertake personal obligations on their own recognizance, as long as those obligations do not commit Earth's resources or military. Mi-young's mouth opened and closed several times. Provision 17 was indeed real. Created during the early days of human space exploration when individual colonists needed the freedom to make agreements with alien traders, it was almost never used anymore. That provision exists for trade deals and mining rights, Mi-young said through clenched teeth. Not for marrying the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. The provision does not specify limitations, Do-yun replied. I checked before I volunteered. A tall man with scars on his face stepped forward. This was Taemin, a xenobiologist who specialized in studying alien psychology. He and Do-yun had become friends during the long journey to the Valthrine homeworld. Mi-young, please, Taemin said. Shouting will not change what happened. The Emperor accepted. The whole galaxy watched it happen. We need to deal with the situation we have, not the situation we wish we had. Mi-young took several deep breaths, forcing herself to calm down. Fine. Do-yun, explain. Why did you do this? Do-yun pulled out his data tablet and brought up a file. I have been studying Princess Lyesa's medical records for 3 weeks. They are publicly available because the Emperor has been trying to find help for her. Everyone focuses on her power and the danger, but nobody is looking at the actual problem. The problem is she can kill people by accident, another delegate said. No, Do-hyun replied. The problem is that her powers respond to uncontrolled emotions, fear, sadness, anger, surprise. These emotions trigger her abilities, but the records show something interesting. When she is calm and happy, nothing happens. When she feels safe, her powers remain dormant. Taemin leaned forward, interested. You think emotional stability is the key? I think isolation is making everything worse, Do-hyun said. Look at this. He displayed a chart on the main screen. Every incident report follows the same pattern. Something makes her anxious. She is alone, so the anxiety grows. The growing anxiety triggers her powers. The powers scare her. The fear makes the powers stronger. It is a cycle. Mi-young studied the chart. She had not looked at the data this way before. And you think you can break this cycle? I think humans are uniquely qualified to try, Do-hyun answered. We come from a world that nearly destroyed itself multiple times. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, climate collapse, artificial intelligence gone wrong. We have extensive experience with managing fear and trauma because our entire species needed therapy just to survive. The room grew quiet as they processed this. Our psychological techniques are the most advanced in the galaxy, Do-hyun continued. Not because we are smarter than other races, but because we needed them more desperately. Meditation, breathing exercises, cognitive behavioral therapy, support systems. These are tools we developed to keep ourselves from destroying everything. Taemin nodded slowly. He has a point. Most alien species never experienced planet-wide trauma like humans did. They either destroyed themselves or they did not. Humans are unusual because we came so close to extinction, but pulled back. That still does not explain why you personally volunteered, Mi-young said. You could have suggested we send specialists, doctors, therapists, trainers. For the first time, Do-hyun looked uncomfortable. He removed his glasses and cleaned them, a nervous habit. I read her personal diary. Part of it is public record, released with her permission to help doctors understand her mental state. And? She feels like a monster. She believes she is broken and dangerous and unlovable. She thinks she deserves to be alone. Do-hyun put his glasses back on. I know what that feels like. The room fell silent. Everyone in the delegation knew Do-hyun's history. He had been a soldier in the Asian coalition during the resource wars. He had seen terrible things and done terrible things. After the wars ended, he suffered from severe trauma. He spent 5 years barely able to function before therapy and meditation helped him rebuild his life. She needs someone who understands, Do-hyun said simply. Someone who will not see her as a weapon or a problem to solve, but as a person who is suffering and needs help. Mi-young sighed deeply. This is still completely insane. But I suppose there is nothing I can do to stop it now. The Emperor accepted your offer in front of the entire Galactic Assembly. Withdrawing would be a diplomatic disaster. I will support you, Taemin said, clapping Do-hyun on the shoulder. You are either the bravest person I know or the craziest. Probably both. Over the next 2 days, news of the humans' volunteer spread across the galaxy. Reaction was mixed. Some called Do-hyun a hero, others called him a fool. Many simply found it funny that a human, of all creatures, thought he could succeed where mighty warriors and powerful nobles had failed. The Draxis ambassador gave an interview to a major news network. Humans are known for their arrogance, he said, his reptilian face twisted in disdain. This engineer will flee like all the others, perhaps faster since humans are physically weak. The Lumini sent a formal message to the human delegation expressing concern for Do-hyun's safety. It was polite but clear. They thought he was going to die. On Earth, reaction was just as intense. Do-hyun's family learned about his decision from news broadcasts. His mother called immediately, begging him to reconsider. His sister Yoonji, a starship pilot, requested emergency leave to travel to the Valthrine homeworld. But his father, a retired soldier who had fought in the same wars as Do-hyun, sent only a brief message. Walk your path with honor, my son. Come home when you can. Do-hyun read that message 3 times, feeling grateful. Meanwhile, in the Crystal Palace, Princess Lyessa learned about her new suitor. She stood at the window of her secured chambers, looking out at the city below. Her handmaiden Somin stood nearby, reading from a data tablet. His name is Do-hyun, Somin said. He is human, age 32 in their years. He works as an engineer, no noble title, no military rank, no obvious qualifications. Why did he volunteer? Lyessa asked quietly. Nobody knows, Your Highness. The human ambassador seemed surprised by it. Lyessa touched the crystal window, watching her reflection. She had watched the assembly proceedings through a video feed. She had seen this human stand up when everyone else stayed silent. She had seen him volunteer with a trembling voice but steady words. He looked scared, she said. Most humans look scared around other species, Somin replied. They are very small compared to most of us. No, I mean he looked scared but did it anyway. Lyessa turned to face her handmaiden. Everyone else would not volunteer because they were scared. He volunteered even though he was scared. Somin did not know what to say to that. What if he is different? Lyessa whispered. What if he actually means it? Your Highness, please do not get your hopes up, Somin said gently. We have been through this before. They all promise to try. They all leave. Lyessa nodded, but something in her chest felt different. She had watched hundreds of suitors come and go. Warriors who boasted of their courage ran away. Nobles who promised devotion could not last a day. Scientists who claimed they could help her looked at her like she was a specimen to study. But this human engineer had not boasted. He had not promised anything except that he believed he could help. And he had looked genuinely scared, which meant he understood the danger and chose to face it anyway. That night, Emperor Kael'thor visited his daughter's chambers. They sat together in her garden, separated by invisible shields that kept her power contained. What do you think of this human? He asked. I do not know, Lyessa replied honestly. Why would he do this, father? What does he gain? I have been asking myself the same question. I had him investigated thoroughly. He is not wealthy. He has no political ambitions. His personnel file says he is a good engineer but not exceptional. There is nothing obvious to gain. Then why? Emperor Kelthor was quiet for a moment. Perhaps humans are simply strange. Or perhaps, my daughter, some people actually are kind for no reason other than kindness itself. Laessa wanted to believe that. She was so tired of being afraid, so tired of being alone, so tired of being treated like a dangerous object instead of a person. I will meet him, she decided. If he is genuine, I will know. If he is another one who will run away, at least it will be over quickly. 3 days later, Do Yun arrived at the Crimson Citadel, the fortress where Laessa lived. He carried only a small bag and his data tablet. As he walked through the halls lined with guards and safety systems, he wondered if he had made the biggest mistake of his life. But then he remembered why he volunteered. Someone needed help. Someone was suffering, and he could not walk away from that, even if it scared him. It was time to meet the princess everyone feared. The garden where they would meet was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Flowers from a dozen worlds bloomed in careful arrangements, their colors bright against white stone paths. A small fountain bubbled peacefully in the center, but surrounding everything were transparent walls that shimmered faintly, shields strong enough to contain explosions. Do-hyun stood at the garden entrance, waiting. His heart beat fast in his chest. Guards watched him from stations around the perimeter. Medical teams stood ready with emergency equipment. Everyone expected disaster. Then Princess Laessa entered from the opposite side. Do-hyun had seen pictures, but they had not prepared him for meeting her in person. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, which was normal for Valthrine. Her silver hair floated around her head as if underwater, moved by unseen currents. Her eyes were violet and seemed to hold depths he could not measure. She wore simple white robes and walked with careful, precise steps. She looked lonely. That was what struck him most, not dangerous or powerful or royal, just deeply, profoundly lonely. They stood on opposite sides of the garden, 40 feet apart. The shields between them could be lowered, but not yet. Not until they established that Laessa would not accidentally hurt him. "Hello," Do-hyun said. He bowed in the human style, from the waist. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." Laessa studied him for a long moment. "You are smaller than I expected. Humans are very small." "Yes, Your Highness, we are short compared to most species." "Why did you volunteer?" Her voice was direct, cutting through pleasantries. "Everyone wants to know, but nobody believes the reasons they hear." Do-hyun appreciated her directness. "I read your medical files. I read part of your diary that you made public. I saw someone suffering, and I thought I could help, so I volunteered." "You want to fix me?" Her voice went flat. "Like all the doctors and scientists?" "No," Do-hyun said firmly. "You are not broken. Your powers are not a disease. They are part of you, but they do not control you. Or they should not control you. Right now they do because nobody has taught you the right techniques." "And you know these techniques?" There was skepticism in her voice, but also a tiny thread of hope. "My people developed them out of desperation. We nearly destroyed ourselves many times. We had to learn how to manage fear and anger and sadness, or we would have gone extinct." He paused. "I also have personal experience. I was a soldier. I saw and did terrible things. Afterward, I could barely function. Loud noises made me panic. I could not sleep. I felt like I was dangerous to everyone around me." Laessa's expression shifted slightly. "What changed?" "Therapy, meditation, breathing exercises, support from people who understood." He smiled sadly. "It took years. I am still not completely healed, but I learned that strong emotions do not have to control my actions. I learned that being dangerous does not mean being a monster." The princess was quiet, processing this. Around the garden, guards and medical staff watched tensely. This was the longest any suitor had talked with her without incident. "I do not know if I can trust you," Liessa said finally. "Everyone promises to help. Everyone leaves." "That is fair," Do-Yun replied. "Trust must be earned. I have one lunar cycle to earn yours. If I fail, I fail, but I would like to try." "How would we even start?" Do-Hyun reached into his bag and pulled out a wooden flute. It was about a foot long, made from bamboo with holes carved along its length. "Do you like music?" The question clearly surprised her. "Yes. I used to play the crystal harp before," she trailed off. "Before your powers made it dangerous. I kept breaking the strings. Sometimes the whole instrument would explode." Do-Yun raised the flute to his lips. "This is called a daegyum. It is from Korea, a region on Earth. My grandfather taught me to play when I was young. Music helps calm the mind." He began to play. The melody was simple and melancholy, a traditional folk song about mountains and loneliness. The notes echoed through the garden, clear and pure. He was not an expert player, but he knew the song well enough. When he finished, Liessa was staring at him with wide eyes. "That was beautiful. Why did you play that for me?" "Because you asked why I volunteered. That song is about someone who lives alone in the mountains, far from other people. Everyone thinks they chose isolation, but really, they are there because they believe they do not deserve connection. The song is about how wrong that belief is." For several seconds, Liessa said nothing. Then quietly, "No one has played music for me in 5 years. Would you like me to play more?" "Yes," she whispered. "Please." That was how they spent their first meeting. Do-Yun played his flute while Liessa listened. They did not lower the shields. They did not come closer. But for the first time in years, the princess felt something other than fear or sadness. She felt something almost like peace. The guards and medical staff were stunned. They had expected screaming, explosions, or the human running away. Instead, they got music. The next day, they met again. This time, Do-Yun brought a data tablet. "I want to teach you breathing exercises," he explained. "They help control emotions by controlling the body. Mind and body are connected. If you calm one, you calm the other." He demonstrated, breathing slowly in through his nose, holding for 4 seconds, then releasing through his mouth. "Try with me. We will do it together." Liessa copied his movements. At first, she felt silly. How could breathing help when her powers could destroy buildings? But Do-Hyun was patient, counting out loud, keeping the rhythm steady. After 10 minutes, she noticed her racing thoughts had slowed down. "It does help," she said, surprised. "This is just the beginning," Do-Hyun told her. "There are many techniques: meditation, physical exercise, mindfulness practices. Humans have spent centuries developing these methods because we needed them. Our emotions are very strong, and we had to learn control or destroy ourselves." They continued meeting daily. Sometimes they practiced breathing exercises. Sometimes Do-Hyun played his flute. Sometimes they just talked. He told her about Earth, about humanity's long and bloody history. He did not hide the terrible parts. He explained how humans fought wars over resources, over beliefs, over fear of those who were different. "We almost ended our species at least 5 times, he said. Nuclear weapons, engineered diseases, climate destruction, artificial intelligence that went wrong, and nanotechnology disasters. Each time, we came so close to extinction that you could measure it in minutes or hours." "How did you survive?" Liessa asked. "Barely. And not because we were smart or strong. We survived because a few people refused to give up, because enough of us decided that even if the future looked impossible, we would try anyway." Liessa found herself thinking about that conversation for days. Humans were not powerful like her people. They did not have advanced technology like the Lumini. They had no special abilities like dozens of other species, but they had survived things that should have killed them. Maybe that was its own kind of power. Soman watched her princess carefully during these days. She saw changes that worried her. Liesa smiled more. She seemed lighter, less burdened. But Soman had seen this before with other suitors. Hope was dangerous because disappointment hurt worse. "Your Highness," Soman said one evening as she brushed Liesa's floating hair. "Please be careful. This human seems kind, but we do not know his true intentions." "He has had many chances to run away," Liesa replied. "He keeps coming back." "For now. But he has not faced any real danger yet. The shields keep him safe. What happens when he gets closer?" Liesa did not have an answer for that. A week into their meetings, something changed. They were practicing meditation together when a bird flew into the garden. It startled Liesa, and without thinking, she reached out with her powers to stop it. The bird froze in midair, held by invisible force. Then Do-hyun gasped in pain. The shields were down for this session since she had been doing well. Now that same power that held the bird was crushing against him. Not enough to kill, but enough to hurt. Pressure squeezed his chest. The air grew thick and hard to breathe. "Stop!" Soman screamed from outside the garden. "Your Highness, stop!" But Liesa was frozen in panic. Her powers responded to her fear, growing stronger. Medical teams rushed forward, but the shields automatically reactivated, trapping both of them inside. Do-hyun could not breathe. Black spots appeared in his vision. He was going to die, he realized distantly. This was how it ended. Then he remembered his training, his grandfather's voice from decades ago. "When you panic, you have already lost. Find your center. Breathe." He forced himself to think through the pain. Liesa was panicking. Her panic fed the power. He needed to break the cycle. With the last air in his lungs, he began to play the digum. It was sloppy and broken, barely recognizable. But the melody was there. The same song from their first meeting. The song about the person alone in the mountains. Liesa heard the music through her panic. How was he playing? Why was he not screaming? The confusion broke her fear just enough. Her control wavered, then steadied. The pressure released. Do-hyun collapsed to his knees, gasping. The bird fell from the air but caught itself and flew away. For a moment, everything was still. Then Liesa ran to him, dropping to her knees beside him. "I am sorry, I am so sorry. I almost killed you." "Not on purpose," Do-hyun wheezed. "Accident. My fault too. Should have been more careful. You should leave, like everyone else. I am too dangerous." Do-hyun looked up at her, still catching his breath. His chest hurt. Bruises were forming already, but he smiled. "That is not how this works. You made a mistake. We learn from it and do better next time." "There cannot be a next time. I almost killed you." "But you stopped," Do-hyun said. "You heard the music and stopped. That means you have control. You just do not know it yet." Liesa stared at him, tears running down her face. No one had ever stayed after something like this. No one had ever called her loss of control a mistake to learn from rather than proof of her nature. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you keep trying?" Do-hyun touched his chest gently, checking for broken ribs. "Because you are worth trying for. Everyone is." That night, Princess Liesa could not sleep. She kept seeing Do-hyun smile even as he struggled to breathe, kept hearing his flute playing through the fear, kept remembering that he had called it a mistake, not a tragedy. Maybe, she thought, maybe she really could learn control. Maybe she was not a monster after all. It was the first time she had allowed herself that hope in years. High Counselor Velrak stood in his private chambers, watching news feeds from across the galaxy. Every channel showed the same story. The human engineer who refused to give up on Princess Liesa. Some called it romantic, others called it foolish, but everyone was watching. This displeased Velrax greatly. He was a Draxus, one of the ancient reptilian species that had ruled vast territories before the Valthrine Empire rose to power. His scales were deep green, almost black, and scars covered his body from centuries of warfare. He had fought in 40 campaigns and killed more enemies than he could count. He commanded respect through power and fear. And now, a weak little human was making him look foolish. Velrax had been the first suitor to approach Princess Lyessa years ago. He saw the political advantage clearly. Marry the princess. Gain control of the empire. Restore Draxus dominance. But he had lasted less than an hour in her presence before her power terrified him into retreat. The shame of that moment still burned. Now this human, this soft creature who probably could not even lift a proper weapon, was succeeding where Velrax had failed. It was unacceptable. He activated his communication console and contacted several other counselors who shared his concerns. The Lumini representative, Crystallis, appeared first. She was a being of living crystal, her form shifting slowly as light passed through her. "We must address the human situation," Velrax said without preamble. "If this marriage happens, it will upset the entire galactic order." "How so?" Crystallis asked, her voice like chimes. "The Emperor chose to allow it. Think about what it means. Humans are the newest, weakest species in the assembly. They have nothing to offer except stubbornness and reproductive ability. If one of them can claim the heir to the Valthrine throne, what does that say about the rest of us?" An insectoid Vrel named Hatchmaster Zix joined the conversation, his mandibles clicking. "It says we were too cowardly to try. The human shames us by succeeding where we feared to attempt." "Exactly," Velrax hissed. "Our reputation suffers. Our political position weakens. Species we have dominated for centuries will begin questioning whether we deserve our status." Crystallis dimmed slightly, indicating concern. "What do you propose?" "We discredit the human. We prove he is unsuitable. We show that this entire affair is a dangerous mistake." Over the next several days, Velrax put his plan into motion. He began spreading rumors through the court. The human was a spy, he suggested. Earth was positioning itself to control the empire through this marriage. Do-Yun had ulterior motives, probably involving technology theft or military secrets. He found willing allies among the noble families who had hoped to marry their own children to Princess Lyessa. They had lost political opportunities when the princess proved too dangerous. Now they lost again to a human nobody. Their resentment made them easy to manipulate. But Velrax's campaign faced an unexpected problem. People liked Do-Yun. The palace staff reported that he was unfailingly polite. He learned everyone's names, including maintenance workers and guards. He asked about their families and remembered details from previous conversations. When a servant dropped a tray near him, he helped clean up instead of walking away. When guards looked tired, he offered to share his human coffee, which was apparently a stimulant on Earth. "He treats everyone like people," one guard told another. "Not like servants or obstacles, just people." This made Velrax's job harder, but not impossible. He needed a public incident, something that would prove the human was unworthy. So he arranged a formal dinner where Do-Yun would be invited to dine with various ambassadors and nobles. The dinner took place in the Grand Hall, with representatives from 24 species in attendance. Do-Yun arrived wearing his best clothes, which were still plain compared to the elaborate outfits around him. He looked nervous, like someone who knew he did not belong in such company. Velrax waited until the third course before making his move. He raised his glass and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I propose a toast to our human guest," he said, his voice dripping with false courtesy. "It takes remarkable courage to pursue a princess so far above one's station. Tell me, Do-Yun of Earth, what military victories have you won? What territories do you control? What makes you worthy of royalty?" The hall grew quiet. Every eye turned to Do-Yun. This was the trap. If Do-hyun responded with anger, he would seem unstable. If he stayed silent, he would seem weak. If he tried to defend himself, his accomplishments would sound pitiful compared to the gathered warriors and rulers. Do-hyun stood slowly. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. High Counselor Velrax, I appreciate your question. You are correct that I have no military victories. I control no territories. By most measures used in this hall, I am nobody important. Velrax smiled, thinking he had won. However, Do-hyun continued, I remember a Draxus proverb my friend Taemin taught me while studying your culture. It goes, the warrior who charges first shows courage. The warrior who stands last shows character. But the warrior who knows when not to fight shows wisdom. He paused, meeting Velrax's eyes directly. I do not seek to fight Princess Liesa. I do not seek to control her. I seek only to help someone who is suffering. If that makes me unworthy in your eyes, I accept that judgment. But I believe true worth comes not from what we conquer, but from what we protect. The hall remained silent. Then Ambassador Crystallis, the Luminae representative, began humming a tone of approval. Several other ambassadors joined in. Even some of the Draxies present clicked their claws against the table, a sign of respect. Velrax felt his moment of triumph turn to ash. The human had not only escaped the trap, but used Velrax's own culture against him. Worse, he had done it while appearing humble and sincere. But Velrax was not finished. If social pressure would not work, he would try direct confrontation. He stood and walked toward Do-hyun, using his full height to loom over the smaller human. Pretty words, Velrax growled. But words are easy. Action requires strength. You are weak. You would break like glass in a real fight. Probably, Do-hyun agreed. I am not a warrior. I never claimed to be. Then how will you protect the princess when enemies come? And they will come. Marrying her makes you a target. Can these soft human hands hold a weapon? Can this fragile body endure combat? Do-hyun looked at his hands, as if considering the question seriously. You are right that I am not physically strong compared to most species here. Humans are small and weak by galactic standards, but we have survived enemies much stronger than ourselves for thousands of years. How? Velrax demanded. We adapt, we think, we cooperate, we endure. Do-hyun met the counselor's eyes again. Humans have been invaded by disease that killed millions. We have been threatened by our own weapons that could have destroyed our world. We have faced enemies we could not possibly defeat in direct combat, and we are still here. Bah, luck and cowardice. Perhaps. Or perhaps there are many kinds of strength, and physical power is only one of them. Velrax wanted to continue, but Ambassador Miyung stood up quickly. Gentlemen, this dinner is meant for diplomacy, not confrontation. Perhaps we should change the subject. The rest of the dinner passed tensely. Velrax returned to his seat, but his mind worked furiously. The direct approach had failed. The human was more clever than expected. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, Princess Liesa learned about the dinner from Somin. Her handmaiden described the confrontation with Velrax, including Do-hyun's responses. He defended you without boasting, Somin said, sounding grudgingly impressed. He could have claimed to be a great warrior or tried to match Velrax's aggression. Instead, he stayed true to what he is. Liesa felt something warm in her chest. She had watched suitors try to impress her before with tales of their accomplishments. She had heard countless boasts about strength and power, but Do-hyun simply said he wanted to help someone who was suffering. I think I would like to meet him without shields tomorrow, she said quietly. Somin's eyes widened. Your Highness? Is that wise? The incident last week? He was right about that too. It was a mistake. We learned from it. Now we do better. That evening, Do-yun received a visit from his sister Unji. She had finally arrived from Earth after weeks of travel. She found him in his quarters, playing his flute alone. "Little brother," she said, pulling him into a hug that nearly cracked his ribs. "Are you insane? Everyone on Earth thinks you have lost your mind." "Maybe I have," Do-yun admitted. "But I do not regret it." Yunji studied him carefully. She was taller than him, muscular from years as a pilot, and had always been the tough one in the family. "Tell me honestly, do you actually care about this princess? Or are you just trying to prove something?" "I care," Do-hyun said simply. "She reminds me of how I felt after the wars. Alone, dangerous, convinced I was broken beyond repair. Someone helped me then. Multiple people helped me. I want to do the same for her. Even if it kills you?" "I would prefer to live," Do-hyun said with a small smile. "But yes, even if it kills me. Some things are worth the risk." Yunji shook her head. "You are definitely insane, but I am proud of you. Father would be too." "Father sent me a message," Do-hyun told her. "He said to walk my path with honor." "That sounds like him." Yunji stood up. "Well, if you are doing this, then I am staying. Someone needs to make sure you do not get yourself killed doing something stupid and noble." As the days passed, opposition to the match continued. Velrax worked tirelessly to find any excuse to separate Do-hyun from the princess. He reviewed security footage, looking for mistakes. He interviewed staff, searching for complaints. He analyzed every conversation, seeking evidence of manipulation or deception. He found nothing. Do-hyun was exactly what he appeared to be, a decent person trying to help. This infuriated Velrax more than any deception would have. He could fight against schemes and plots. He could expose villains and traitors. But how did you fight against someone who was genuinely kind? Emperor Kaothor watched all of this from his throne room. His advisors reported on Velrax's activities, on the growing bond between his daughter and the human, on the shifting politics of the court. "What do you think?" he asked Elder Thoros, his oldest friend and most trusted counselor. The ancient advisor was silent for a long moment. "I think the human sees your daughter as a person, not as a political tool or a dangerous weapon. That is rare, perhaps unique." "Is it enough?" "That depends on whether she can truly gain control of her powers, and whether enemies will allow this match to proceed." Thoros paused. "Velrax will not stop. He sees this as a threat to the established order." "He is right," the Emperor said quietly. "If a human can marry my daughter, it does change everything. It says that worth comes from character, not from power or lineage. Many will find that threatening." "Do you support it?" Emperor Kaothor looked toward the wing of the palace where his daughter lived. "I support my daughter's happiness. For the first time in years, she has hope. I will not take that away from her unless I have no choice." The lunar cycle was half over. Do-yun and Liesa continued their meetings, now often without shields. Her control grew better each day. There were still accidents, small ones, but she learned to stop herself faster each time. And slowly, carefully, something deeper than friendship began to grow between them. Neither spoke of it yet, but both felt it, warm and fragile and precious. The question was whether it would survive what was coming. The assassins came on the 23rd night of the lunar cycle. There were 3 of them. Professionals hired through intermediaries so careful that even they did not know who paid them. They were Vrel, insectoids whose natural abilities included climbing walls and seeing in darkness. They moved through the palace ventilation systems like shadows, avoiding cameras and guards with practiced ease. Their target was simple: kill the human engineer in his sleep, make it look like an accident or natural causes if possible. If not possible, simply make sure he died. But they did not know that Do-yun was a light sleeper. Years of military service and trauma had left him unable to rest deeply. The faintest sound would wake him. When he heard movement in the ventilation shaft above his room, his eyes opened instantly. He did not move, did not change his breathing. He simply listened and calculated. 3 separate sounds, moving with purpose. This was not maintenance. This was danger. Do-Yun had planned for this. He had studied the palace layout obsessively since arriving. He knew every exit, every hallway, every room. More importantly, he had noticed that the western wing of the palace was scheduled for renovation starting next week. Most rooms there were already empty. He had filed a request 3 days ago for safety drills to be conducted in that wing. The request was approved because he was a guest of the emperor and because palace security appreciated someone taking safety seriously. Now he triggered the emergency alarm. Lights blazed throughout his quarters. Sirens wailed. The assassins hesitated, caught between completing their mission and escaping. That hesitation cost them. Palace guards burst into the room from 3 directions, weapons ready. The fight was brief and brutal. One assassin tried to flee and was caught. Another fought and was subdued. The third managed to escape, but left behind equipment that would be traced. But during the chaos, something else happened. Princess Layessa felt Do-Yun's fear through their growing psychic bond. She did not understand what she felt, only that he was in terrible danger. Panic seized her instantly and completely. Her powers exploded outward. The western wing of the palace simply ceased to exist. One moment there were walls and floors and ceilings. The next moment there was twisted metal and shattered crystal and empty air. The destruction was absolute and instantaneous. If anyone had been in that wing, they would have been vaporized. But Do-Yun's safety drill had evacuated everyone 2 hours earlier. The shockwave from the destruction rocked the entire palace. Alarms screamed. Emergency shields activated across every critical system. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the entire structure might collapse. Then the initial blast faded, and rescue teams rushed toward the western wing. What they found was devastation beyond imagination. Nothing remained except foundations and a crater where rooms had been. Layessa stood at the edge of the destruction, her eyes wide with horror. Her whole body shook. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She had done this. Her power, her curse, her uncontrolled rage. How many had she killed? How many lives had she destroyed? Soman reached her first, grabbing her shoulders. "Your Highness, you must calm down, please." But Layessa was beyond hearing. She collapsed to her knees amid the rubble. Convinced she had just proven what she had always feared. She was a monster. Monsters destroyed. Monsters killed. Monsters should be locked away forever. Then someone touched her hands. Do-Yun knelt beside her, his clothes torn from the earlier fight with assassins, bruises forming on his face. But he was alive. He was here. He held her hands firmly, not letting go even as psychic energy arced around them like lightning. "Layessa," he said. His voice was steady despite everything. "Look at me." She raised her eyes to meet his. "You felt my danger and reacted. That was not evil. That was protection. You were trying to save someone you care about." "I destroyed everything," she sobbed. "I killed so many people." "No one was in that wing. I evacuated it this afternoon. The safety drill." Layessa stared at him, not understanding. "What?" "I suspected someone might try to hurt me. I could not prove it, but I felt it. So I made sure the most vulnerable section of the palace was empty. When the attack came, when you responded with your power, no one died. You knew this would happen. I knew something might happen. I planned for it." He smiled sadly. "Humans are very good at planning for disasters. We have had a lot of practice." Tears ran down Layessa's face, but they were different tears now. You protected people from me. Even when you were in danger, you were protecting others from my power. I was protecting you too, Do-Yun said quietly. Because this is not your fault. Someone tried to kill me. You responded. The destruction is on them, not you. For the first time in her life, Lyessa felt something click into place in her mind. Her powers were not separate from her. They were part of her, yes, but they responded to her emotions and will. What happened tonight was not proof of her monstrous nature. It was proof that she needed to learn control and that people she cared about needed protection. I could have killed you, she whispered. But you did not. Your power exploded outward away from me. Even in panic, part of you was directing it. Lyessa realized he was right. The destruction was massive, but perfectly directed away from where Do-Hyun had been. Her subconscious mind had protected him even while her conscious mind panicked. Around them, palace security and medical teams worked frantically. Emperor Kelthor arrived, his face pale with shock. He saw his daughter kneeling in the rubble, holding hands with the human engineer. Lyessa, he began. I am sorry, Father, she said, her voice breaking. I am so sorry. No one died, Do-Yun told the Emperor. The western wing was empty. I made sure of it. The Emperor looked at the young human with new understanding. You planned for this. I planned for something. I did not know what exactly, but I knew danger was coming. Do-Hyun helped Lyessa to her feet, still holding her hands. Someone hired assassins to kill me. The investigation will find who. High Counselor Velrax arrived moments later, his face carefully arranged into an expression of shock and concern. But something in his eyes betrayed him. Emperor Kelthor saw it. So did Elder Thoros. Even Do-Yun noticed the way Velrax looked at the destruction with more satisfaction than horror. This is a tragedy, Velrax declared. The princess is clearly too dangerous. This match must end immediately for everyone's safety. No, Lyessa said. Her voice was quiet but firm. This match continues. Velrax turned to her, surprised. Your Highness, you just destroyed an entire wing of the palace. Because assassins attacked someone I care about, my response was not controlled, but it was not random either. She lifted her chin, meeting Velrax's gaze. I am done hiding. I am done believing I am a monster. I am going to learn control, and Do-Hyun is going to help me. Your Highness, that is my decision, she said with such authority that even Velrax fell silent. Emperor Kelthor felt pride surge through him. This was the daughter he had always known existed beneath the fear and isolation. This was the princess who would one day rule an empire. Over the next several days, investigation teams traced the assassins back to their source. The trail led through dozens of intermediaries, but eventually, evidence pointed toward Velrax and his allies. The proof was not absolute. Not enough for formal charges against a high counselor, but it was enough for everyone to know the truth. Velrax was called before the Emperor in private. You have brought shame to your position, Kelthor said coldly. You have endangered my daughter and her chosen companion. You have violated the sacred laws of hospitality. You cannot prove. I do not need absolute proof for what I am about to do, the Emperor interrupted. You are removed from the High Council, effective immediately. You will return to the Draxis homeworld. If you ever set foot in this system again, you will be arrested and tried for attempted murder. Velrax's face twisted with rage, but he knew he was defeated. He had lost, and the human had won. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening. Human specialists began arriving at the palace. Taemin had contacted Earth and requested help. The human government, seeing an opportunity to strengthen relations with the Valthrine Empire, sent some of their best experts. There was Dr. Jiwon, a psychiatrist who specialized in trauma and emotional regulation. There was Master Sang-woo, a meditation teacher who had trained soldiers and emergency responders. There was Professor Minho, a neuroscientist who studied the connection between emotions and physical responses. They came not with advanced technology or alien sciences, but with simple human techniques developed over centuries of dealing with their own destructive impulses. Your power responds to emotions, Dr. Jiwon explained to Liesa during their first session. So we teach emotional regulation, not suppression, that does not work, but regulation, understanding what you feel, why you feel it, and how to process it safely. Master Sang-woo taught her meditation techniques that humans had used for thousands of years. The mind is like a river, he said. You cannot stop the water from flowing, but you can direct where it goes. Professor Minho helped her understand the physical side. Emotions create chemical and electrical changes in the body. If we can manage the body's response, we can manage the emotional intensity. Liesa absorbed everything desperately. For the first time, she had hope that real change was possible. Not because anyone promised to fix her or lock away her powers, but because they were teaching her to work with herself instead of against herself. Do-yoon attended every session, learning alongside her. They practiced breathing exercises together, they meditated together, they discussed their fears and anxieties together. The bond between them grew stronger each day. One evening, as they sat in the reconstructed garden watching 3 suns set, Liesa spoke quietly. I think I am falling in love with you. Do-yoon was silent for a moment. Then he smiled. I think I have been falling in love with you for weeks. I was just too scared to say it. You? Scared? Liesa laughed softly. You are the bravest person I know. Being brave does not mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. She took his hand, marveling that she could do so without fear. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for not giving up on yourself, he replied. They sat together as darkness fell, 2 people from different worlds, finding something neither had expected, hope, connection, and the beginning of love. But they both knew the hardest test was still to come. The lunar cycle was almost over. Soon they would face the final challenge that would determine whether this match could truly proceed. The Galactic Assembly was preparing for the trial of unity, and the entire galaxy was watching. The announcement came from the Galactic Assembly 3 days after the assassination attempt. Despite Velrax's removal, his supporters remained numerous and vocal. They demanded proof that the human was worthy, that the princess was safe, that this unprecedented match would not bring disaster. Emperor Kael'thor stood before the assembly and spoke with heavy resignation. The trial of unity will be held. This is tradition when a royal match is questioned by the council. Beside him, Ambassador Myung looked stricken. Your Majesty, surely modern times do not require such ancient practices. Tradition binds the empire together, the emperor replied. If I ignore it, I undermine the very foundation of my authority. The trial must happen. The trial of unity consisted of 3 challenges, each designed to prove a suitor's complete worthiness. The first was martial prowess, demonstrating ability to protect. The second was intellectual capacity, demonstrating wisdom. The third was the most dangerous, proof of perfect compatibility with the princess. Do-hyun learned the details in a private briefing with Emperor Kael'thor and Elder Thoros. The first challenge requires combat against a champion chosen by the council, Thoros explained. You must either defeat your opponent or prove your worth through endurance. I cannot defeat a trained warrior, Do-hyun said plainly. I am an engineer, not a fighter. Then you must endure, the emperor said. Fight with honor until your opponent yields or acknowledges your worth. The second challenge is the mathematical labyrinth, Thoros continued. A four-dimensional proof that has defeated some of the galaxy's greatest minds. You must solve it within 6 hours. Do-hyun felt his stomach sink. He was decent at mathematics for an engineer, but solving problems that stumped alien geniuses seemed impossible. The third challenge. The Emperor paused, clearly pained. You must stand before Liesa while she releases her full power, unshielded. If you survive, it proves she has achieved control. If not— He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. If I die during the third challenge, what happens to the princess? Do-hyun asked. She will be declared too dangerous for marriage. She will remain isolated for her own safety and the safety of others. Do-hyun nodded slowly. So this was not just about him proving his worth. It was about Liesa proving her control. If he failed, she lost everything. When does the trial begin? He asked. 1 week from today. That gives you time to prepare. Over the next 7 days, help came from unexpected directions. The human military sent Colonel Ji-hoon, a special forces operative who had trained in multiple combat styles. He was a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes and scars that told stories. I cannot make you into a warrior in 1 week, Ji-hoon said bluntly during their first session. But I can teach you to survive. Humans are good at surviving. They trained from dawn until dusk. Ji-hoon did not try to teach Do-hyun fancy moves or complicated techniques. Instead, he focused on basics: how to fall without breaking bones, how to protect vital areas, how to endure pain, how to keep moving when everything hurt. In combat, the body wants to quit, Ji-hoon explained while they sparred. Muscles scream, lungs burn, brain says stop, but humans have this gift. We can ignore our bodies. We can keep going past the point other species collapse. That is your advantage. For the intellectual challenge, Professor Haiwan arrived from Earth. She was elderly, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She was one of humanity's leading theoretical physicists and had solved problems that amazed alien scientists. The mathematical labyrinth is famous, she said, reviewing the challenge details. Many attempt it, few succeed. But I noticed something interesting about those who do succeed. What is that? Do-hyun asked. They are not always the ones with the most raw computational power. Sometimes they succeed through intuition, through seeing patterns that pure logic misses. She smiled. Humans evolved pattern recognition as hunters. We needed to track prey, predict behavior, see connections in chaos. That cognitive trait is very strong in us. She spent hours teaching Do-hyun not to calculate harder, but to think differently, to look for patterns, to trust his intuition, to make creative leaps that seemed illogical but felt right. Mathematics is not just numbers, Haiwan said. It is the language of relationships, and humans are very good at understanding relationships. Meanwhile, Liesa trained with the human specialists, but her focus was different. She had to achieve perfect control, enough to release her full power directly at someone she loved without harming him. This is the hardest thing we will ever ask you to do, Dr. Ji-won said during one session. You must intentionally do what terrifies you most. I do not know if I can, Liesa admitted. What if I kill him? Then we all fail, and you remain isolated forever, the doctor said bluntly. I will not lie to you about the stakes, but I believe you can do this. You have grown so much in these weeks. Master Sang-woo worked with her on focus techniques. Power and control are not opposites, he taught. Control is simply power with direction. A river in flood is powerful but destructive. That same river in a channel is powerful and useful. You are learning to be the channel. Do-hyun and Liesa continued spending time together each evening. They did not talk much about the upcoming trial. Instead, they talked about everything else. Their dreams, their fears, their hopes for the future. "If we survive this," Liesa said one night, "what would you want to do?" Do-hyun thought carefully. "I would like to help others. There must be many people in the galaxy with abilities they cannot control. We could teach them what you have learned." "We?" Liesa smiled. "You assume I want to spend my life doing that. Do you not?" "I do," she admitted. "I was just happy you said we." The day of the trial arrived. The Arena of Flames was an ancient structure built thousands of years ago for ceremonies and tests. It could hold 50,000 spectators, and today it was full. Representatives from every major civilization attended. Billions more watched via holographic feeds across the galaxy. Do-hyun stood in the preparation chamber wearing light armor that Ji-hoon had helped him choose. It would not stop a serious attack, but it might keep him alive a bit longer. His hands shook slightly as he wrapped tape around his knuckles. Yoonji entered, her pilot uniform crisp and military. "Little brother, you do not have to do this. You could withdraw. No one would blame you." "I would blame me," Do-hyun replied. "And more importantly, Liesa would lose her chance at freedom." "You really love her, don't you?" "Yes." "Is that strange? We have only known each other one lunar cycle." Yoonji laughed softly. "Mother met father and married him within 3 months. Sometimes you just know." She hugged him tightly. "Win or lose, I am proud of you." The first challenge began. Do-hyun walked into the arena to the roar of the crowd. Across from him stood his opponent, a Draxis warrior named Kraxthor, chosen by the remaining council members to replace the disgraced Velrax. Kraxthor was massive, nearly 9 feet tall, covered in thick scales and battle scars. He carried a staff as tall as Do-hyun, made from a metal that rang like a bell when it struck the ground. He was a champion of 40 fights, undefeated. Emperor Kelthor's voice boomed across the arena. "The first challenge begins. Combatants, show your worth." Kraxthor moved first, incredibly fast for his size. His staff swept toward Do-hyun's head. Do-hyun dropped flat, the weapon passing inches above him. He rolled away and scrambled to his feet. The crowd cheered. This was entertainment to them. For 4 hours, the fight continued. Do-hyun could not land a meaningful blow. Kraxthor was too strong, too skilled, too experienced. But Do-hyun could evade. He could endure. Every time he was knocked down, he got up. Every time he was hit, he stayed conscious. Ji-hoon's training showed. Do-hyun protected his vital areas. He fell properly to minimize damage. He kept moving even when his body begged him to stop. He did not try to win through strength. He simply refused to surrender. By the 3rd hour, Kraxthor began breathing harder. The Draxis warrior had fought many opponents, but none who endured like this. This human was weak, slow, and had no chance of victory. But he kept standing up. "Stay down," Kraxthor growled after knocking Do-hyun to the ground for the 100th time. "You have proven your courage. You can yield with honor." Do-hyun coughed blood and struggled to his feet. "Not yet." "Why?" The warrior sounded genuinely confused. "You cannot win." "This is not about winning," Do-hyun gasped. "This is about proving I will not quit, that I will protect what matters even when I am outmatched." Kraxthor stared at the broken, bleeding human. Then he did something unprecedented. He dropped his staff and bowed. "I yield," he declared loudly. The arena fell silent in shock. "I cannot defeat his will," Kraxthor explained to the gathered crowd. "I can break his body, but his spirit remains unbroken. By Draxis tradition, that makes him the victor. I acknowledge his worth." The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some protested, but the rules were clear. If a warrior yielded, the challenge was won. Do-hyun collapsed, barely conscious. Medical teams rushed to him. As they carried him away, he saw Liessa in the royal box, tears streaming down her face. The second challenge came 2 days later, giving Do-Yun time to recover. His body was covered in bruises and wrapped in bandages, but he could walk and think. The mathematical labyrinth appeared as a holographic structure floating in the middle of the arena. It was beautiful and terrifying, a four-dimensional shape that hurt to look at because human eyes were not meant to perceive such geometry. "You have 6 hours," Elder Thoros announced. "Begin." Do-Hyun approached the problem carefully. It was indeed complex beyond anything he had ever attempted. Equations branched in multiple dimensions. Variables interacted in ways that seemed contradictory. Pure calculation would take days, maybe weeks. He remembered Haiyuan's words, "Trust your intuition. See the patterns." So he stopped trying to calculate and started trying to feel. What was this shape trying to tell him? What was the underlying pattern? He let his mind relax, let connections form without forcing them. 3 hours passed. 4. 5. The crowd grew restless. Other humans in attendance whispered nervously. It seemed impossible. Then, with 30 minutes remaining, Do-Hyun saw it. The solution was not computational. It was elegant and simple, hidden beneath layers of complexity. The four-dimensional shape was actually a projection of a simpler form, viewed from an unusual angle. He input the solution with shaking hands. The labyrinth flashed green. Solved. The arena erupted again. Professor Haiyuan, watching from the stands, grinned widely. The human had done it not through superior calculation, but through pattern recognition and creative thinking, exactly as she predicted. But now came the final challenge, the most dangerous one, the test that would determine everything. The night before the final challenge, Do-Hyun could not sleep. He lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what would happen tomorrow. He would stand before Liessa, unshielded and vulnerable, while she released her full power directly at him. If she could not control it, he would die. If he died, she would be declared too dangerous and isolated forever. Everything depended on her ability to master something that had controlled her entire life. No pressure at all. A soft knock came at his door. He opened it to find Liessa standing there, wrapped in a simple cloak. Salman stood behind her, looking worried, but saying nothing. "I needed to see you," Liessa said quietly. Do-Hyun let her in. They sat together on the balcony overlooking the city. 3 moons hung in the sky, casting silver light across everything. "I am terrified," Liessa admitted. "Not of my power. I am terrified of hurting you. Of proving that everyone was right about me." "You are not a monster," Do-Hyun said firmly. "We have been over this." "But what if I fail tomorrow? What if I kill you?" Do-Hyun took her hands in his. "Then I die knowing I helped someone see their own worth. I die knowing I loved someone extraordinary. That is not a bad way to go." "How can you be so calm about dying?" "I am not calm. I am terrified too." He smiled sadly. "But being scared does not change what must be done. Tomorrow happens whether we are ready or not." They sat in silence for a while, just being together. "Tell me about your dreams," Liessa said suddenly. "If we survive tomorrow, if we can be together." "What do you dream about?" Do-Hyun thought carefully. "I dream about waking up next to you without fear, about traveling to different worlds together, about helping others who feel broken and alone, about growing old if humans and Valthrine can do that together." "We can," Liessa said. "Our species are compatible for long-term bonding. I researched it." "Of course you did." Do-Hyun laughed. "What about you? What do you dream about?" "I dream about being free," she said simply. "About walking through a market without shields. about touching people without terror, about having children someday who do not inherit my curse." She paused. "Except I am starting to think it is not a curse, just a gift I never learned to use properly." "That is growth talking. Dr. Jiwan would be proud." As dawn approached, Liesa stood to leave. But before she went, she kissed Do-hyun gently. "Tomorrow, I will protect you. I promise." "I know," he replied. "I trust you completely." After she left, Do-hyun finally slept for a few hours. He dreamed of music and gardens and a future that seemed impossibly bright. The day of the final challenge arrived with clear skies and perfect weather. The arena of flames filled once again. The entire galaxy watched. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Would the princess prove her control, or would the human die trying? Do-hyun walked into the arena wearing no armor, no protection at all. Just simple clothes and his courage. Across from him, at the opposite end, stood Princess Liesa. She wore white robes that floated around her, and her silver hair moved with invisible currents. Between them was empty space. No shields, no barriers, nothing to stop what was coming. Emperor Kael'thor's voice rang out. "The final challenge. Princess Liesa will release her full power. Do-hyun of Earth will endure. This tests both control and compatibility. If both survive, the match is approved. Begin when ready." The crowd fell silent. Billions held their breath. Liesa looked across the arena at Do-hyun. Fear filled her eyes, but also determination. She had worked so hard for this moment. She had learned so much. But would it be enough? Do-hyun smiled at her. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out his dagum flute and played a single note. The same opening note from the song he played during their first meeting. The song about loneliness and connection. It was a reminder. "You are not alone. I am here with you." Liesa took a deep breath, exactly as Master Sangwoo had taught her. She centered herself, feeling her power coiling inside her like a living thing. Usually it felt chaotic and wild. Today, for the first time, it felt like an extension of her own body. She raised her hands. Power began to build, visible as a shimmering distortion in the air. The arena's sensors screamed warnings. This was enough energy to destroy a battleship, building rapidly. In the crowd, people leaned forward. Some covered their eyes. Ambassador Myung gripped her armrest so hard it cracked. Taemin whispered a prayer to a god he did not believe in. Yoonji held her breath, willing her brother to survive. Liesa released the power. It came like a storm, like the wrath of stars, like the force that shaped galaxies. Psychic energy roared across the arena, visible as purple-white lightning that made the air scream. Monitoring equipment overloaded and shut down. The shields protecting the crowd strained to their maximum. And Do-hyun stood in the center of it all. The energy swirled around him, through him, past him. He felt its immense pressure, felt the weight of it trying to crush him. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide, to escape. But he stood still, trusting Liesa completely, because something miraculous was happening. The power was not striking him randomly. It was dancing around him, flowing in controlled patterns. Liesa was not just releasing energy. She was directing it, shaping it, making it beautiful. The storm of psychic power began forming shapes in the air. Flowers bloomed and faded. Birds flew in impossible patterns. Music played without sound. It was Liesa's soul made visible, all her loneliness and fear and hope and love expressed through controlled power. Tears ran down her face as she held the storm. This was everything she had inside her, all the emotions she had locked away for years, finally released but not destructive, not harmful, just honest and real and hers. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Still the power flowed, and still Do-hyun stood unharmed, his clothes whipped in the psychic wind. His hair stood on end from the energy, but he was safe because Lyessa made him safe. Finally, after 20 minutes, she let the power fade. It dissipated slowly, like fog burning away in sunlight. The last threads of energy curled around Do-Yun gently before vanishing. Silence filled the arena. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. Then Emperor Kyle Thor stood, his voice filled with emotion. The trial is complete. Princess Lyessa has demonstrated perfect control. Do-Hyun of Earth has proven his worth. The match is approved. The crowd exploded with noise, cheering, arguments, celebration, disbelief. But none of it mattered to Do-Hyun and Lyessa. They ran toward each other across the arena and met in the middle, embracing without fear for the first time. "I did it," Lyessa sobbed into his shoulder. "I actually did it." "I never doubted you," Do-Hyun said, holding her tightly. "Not for a second." Around them, the galaxy watched and understood something profound. This was not just about a marriage. This was proof that control was possible, that fear could be overcome, that connection mattered more than power. And it was proof that humans, these strange, stubborn creatures, brought something unique to the galaxy: the absolute refusal to accept that problems were unsolvable. The wedding took place 3 months later. It was the largest celebration the Valthrine Empire had ever seen. Representatives from every civilization attended, even the Draxes, who sent Kraxthor himself as a gesture of respect. The ceremony blended human and Valthrine traditions. Lyessa wore white robes embedded with crystals that caught the light. Do-Hyun wore formal Korean hanbok in deep blue. They spoke vows in both languages, promising partnership, respect, and love. When the ceremony ended, they walked through the capital city without shields. People lined the streets, watching in amazement as Princess Lyessa moved freely among them. Children ran up to her with flowers. Elders offered blessings. No one feared her anymore. That night, at the celebration feast, Emperor Kael'thor stood and raised his glass. "Today my daughter married for love. Today she proved that power and control can coexist. Today, the galaxy learned something from humans. That courage means facing fear, not lacking it." He turned to Do-Hyun. "When I asked if anyone was courageous enough to marry my daughter, only you stepped forward. Everyone else saw danger. You saw a person who needed help. Thank you for giving my daughter her life back." Do-Hyun bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I only did what anyone should do. I saw someone suffering and offered help." "But you are wrong," Taemin called out from his seat. "Most people do not do that. Most people look away. That is why what you did matters." The celebration continued late into the night. Humans and aliens mixed freely, sharing food and stories. The cultural exchange that began with this marriage would spread across centuries. Years later, Do-Hyun and Lyessa established the Institute of Control, a facility dedicated to helping beings with difficult or dangerous abilities. They combined human psychological techniques with alien technology, creating programs that helped thousands. Their methods were so successful that other species began studying human approaches to trauma and emotional regulation. What humanity had learned through centuries of near destruction became valuable knowledge for the entire galaxy. They had 3 children over the decades. Each inherited Lyessa's psychic abilities, but also Do-Hyun's emotional control and determination. They grew up learning both Valthrine and human traditions, becoming bridges between worlds. One evening, when they were both much older, Do-Hyun and Lyessa sat in their garden watching the sunset. His hair was gray now, and her silver hair had dimmed slightly, but they still held hands, still found peace in each other's presence. "Do you ever regret it?" Lyessa asked. "Volunteering that day? Your life would have been so much simpler." Do-Hyun laughed. "Simpler, yes, but not better, not by any measure. I still do not understand why you did it. Everyone else was afraid. I was afraid too, Do-hyun admitted. But I remembered something my father told me before I left for the resource wars. He said that courage is not about never feeling fear. It is about deciding that something else matters more than your fear. And what mattered more than your fear? You did. Your suffering, your isolation, your hope. That mattered more. He squeezed her hand gently. Besides, humans are stubborn. We do not know when to quit. It is both our greatest strength and our greatest flaw. Lyessa laughed, the sound like music. The galaxy is still trying to figure you humans out. You are small, technologically behind, physically weak. Yet you accomplish things that should be impossible, because we do not know they are impossible until after we have done them, Do-hyun said with a grin. And sometimes, not even then. They sat quietly as 3 moons rose over the city. Their children were at the institute, teaching new students. Their grandchildren would soon be old enough to begin their own training. The future stretched ahead, bright with possibility. Somewhere in the galaxy, the phrase "humanity, fuck yeah" had become popular. It was crude human slang that captured something essential about the species. They were survivors who refused to accept limitations. They were problem solvers who would not quit. They were bridge builders who saw potential where others saw obstacles. And it had all started because one human engineer heard a desperate question and simply said yes. Is there no one courageous enough to marry my daughter? Only one human man had stepped forward, and in doing so, he had changed everything, not through power or technology or force, just through kindness, determination, and the very human belief that when someone needed help, you offered it. No matter how scared you were, no matter how impossible it seemed, because that was what humans did. They hoped when hope seemed foolish. They tried when trying seemed pointless. They stood up when everyone else sat down. And sometimes, against all odds, they won. Do-hyun played his flute as stars emerged in the darkening sky. The melody drifted across the garden, the same song from decades ago, the song about loneliness and connection. But this time, he was not playing for someone alone in the mountains. He was playing for someone who had found her way home, and she was playing back, her crystal harp harmonizing perfectly with his wooden flute. 2 different worlds, 2 different people, making one beautiful song together. That was the real miracle. Not the trial or the power or the ceremony. Just 2 people choosing each other, day after day, year after year, creating something neither could have built alone. And across the galaxy, others watched and learned. Love was not about power or perfection. It was about seeing someone's worth when they could not see it themselves. It was about standing beside them when everyone else walked away. It was about simple courage in the face of impossible odds. It was, in the end, very human, and that made all the difference.